Grand Theft Auto 5. At some point in time, I can almost guarantee you hated this game, and if you haven't, I can pretty much promise you soon you will. Rockstar's magnum opus is now nothing more than a crowning achievement of greed, laziness, and their own unwillingness to continue with what put the company in everyone's good graces to begin with. They refuse to go back to their passion and focus on single-player experiences, something that's evident with them long leaving Grand Theft Auto 5 single-player DLC in the concept room, a DLC that they themselves announced and guaranteed was coming. That's of course long before Grand Theft Auto Online's appetite for continuously finding ways to incentivize players to shell out money for shark cards became a thing, before GTA Online starved Red Dead Redemption's online portion of ever really getting off the ground, and with this online portion continuing to be the primary focus of Rockstar themselves. And while I say all of this, allow me to make one thing clear. I am not bitter for them still not releasing Grand Theft Auto 6. There seems to be this common sentiment where if anyone criticizes Rockstar or whatever they're doing these days, particularly pertaining to GTA 5 or GTA Online, then you're bitching, complaining, and you're upset because the next game isn't out. I think there's a clear difference between criticizing a company's current moves and having the mental capacity and level-headedness to be able to differentiate between someone being upset about not seeing a new game versus whether if a company and what they're doing currently is not only right and wrong, but whether if it's of the same quality that that company is particularly known for in the past. On the topic of Grand Theft Auto 6, personally I'd rather see them invest as much time, energy, and overall manpower as long as it takes to deliver as great of an experience as possible. And given the level of beauty and detail that Red Dead Redemption 2 and of course Grand Theft Auto 5 presented us with, Rockstar better damn create an entire universe based off the current expectations most people have. But the anger and disdain towards Grand Theft Auto 5 goes much deeper than just a single postponement of another Grand Theft Auto iteration. Rockstar has slowly and systematically removed content that was already accessible for the player base for Grand Theft Auto Online. They locked it behind a paywall and then re-released it with full-blown trailers dedicated to this new quote-unquote content. New quote-unquote content that has been out and readily available for players for years. The hate for Grand Theft Auto 5 is a combination, from my personal opinion, of the multiplayer being Rockstar's newfound focus, poor ports and remasters from Rockstar in the last year, and of course multiple versions of Grand Theft Auto 5 itself. With the latest versions of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X lacking enough improvements and additions to justify the new price tag, or even soothe players' frustration at it being Rockstar's continuous focus. I went through my own time of hating Grand Theft Auto 5. There's a famous quote by Martin Luther King that perfectly summarizes my perspective on this game, and the quote goes as follows: "Nothing turns to hate so bitter as what was once loved." I adored Grand Theft Auto 5, and you know what? I still do. Nothing beats hopping in a car and driving around the bustling city of Los Santos, or taking over a plane and flying through the low valley with calming waters right underneath you. There's a valley in between the mountains right next to Fort Zancudo that has to be one of the most beautiful locations in this game for me. The water is calming with the low-lying trees, and just the way the sun sets and bounces off the water is breathtaking. With the water itself so calm, it's such a contrast to the aggressive water out in the ocean or the rocking motion out in the sandy shores lake. It reminds me why I personally love this game so much and why Grand Theft Auto as a series means so much to me. Sure, for some it's a crime simulator, a giant sandbox for any of our most psychotic dreams to run rampant with as much robbing, carjacking, traffic violations, and the occasional vehicular manslaughter that accompanies our misdeeds, but Grand Theft Auto is so much more. Grand Theft Auto 5 in particular is so much more than that. Rockstar perfectly captured the own charm of Los Angeles in their fictionalized take. Los Santos is home to the wealthy elite lounging in their multi-million-dollar mansions, not too different from what you can find in Beverly Hills or Bel Air. Low-income families that call projects, poorly maintained strip malls, frankly crack houses and rogue shacks, homes, they're all present. The deep contrast in the social classes are all present in Los Santos with San Andreas, with many NPCs imitating the dress code and behavior of the real-life counterparts they're modeled after. Los Santos and the other major part of the San Andreas state, Blaine County, are teeming with life. The game is a living, breathing world, fully detailed and crafted from the ground up to make this, on the surface, the most realistic crime simulator of all time. Traffic, both by vehicles and pedestrians, react to all of your actions. Families on the beach can be strolling around going, about their day-to-day business. People can be seen golfing, going shopping, driving their boats out in the ocean, bodybuilders working out at the beach. Vespucci Pier is home to rides the player can actually pay to hop on. Blaine County, on the other hand, has deer and even coyotes roaming about. Really, I can go on and on about all the detail and minor things Rockstar crafted into this absolute masterpiece, but ultimately, all of it boils down to one main thing. It's a world you can't escape in. The sunset in this game is downright gorgeous. You can experience it from the illuminated Vinewood sign, driving towards downtown Los Santos in the middle of the night, riding a jet ski in the ocean, or even flying low over somebody's head as the trees and grass beneath you bask in the warmth of the sun. It's a world you can pretend to do your own day-to-day routine in. It's a world that in its own unique way has its own history and how everything came to be. A history that can be perceived through 3 different protagonists, something that adds infinitely to this game's replayability factor, because now you can process your individual actions, everything you see and everything you do, through the mindset of 3 completely different personalities, consequently making the experience of Los Santos and Blaine County so much more interesting and long-lasting. While yes, it does take a lot of imagination on the player's part to do that, which may mean, objectively speaking, it's not a tool of Rockstar's own creation, but it's something that wouldn't be as spectacular if Rockstar didn't put as much time and effort into this game's world and the 3 playable protagonists you can take over. Imagine if Michael, Trevor, and Franklin were all extensions of each other or copy and pasted from one another, with the only significant difference between each being their special ability, which has nothing more than gameplay implications. It doesn't add more to their individual personalities, it doesn't add more to their individual mindsets or perspectives. They're not the same exact person. If you hop in a car and you run someone over, it's going to be a completely different reaction from Trevor to Michael to even Franklin. With Franklin being from less fortunate himself, he'd undoubtedly empathize while showing a bit of nonchalance as, it's a struggle we all have. It's unfortunate that they came to the swift and timely end that they did, but ultimately it's a dog-eat-dog world, and Franklin isn't going to let someone get over him just because he feels bad that they're still in that closed world mindset. Too close-minded to leave their struggles of street life. Michael, on the other hand, being much older and having a criminal background himself, could possibly also empathize and even feel a little bit of sadness or remorse, as most people, as they get older, start to experience a little bit of regret and see the error of their lifestyle from the years before. There's a level of understanding and an illuminance on the path that they could have taken, a type of wisdom that's usually only obtained with age. And Trevor, on the other hand, is, well, in Michael's words, hell walking on earth. Trevor is pure chaos. He lives and breathes it. So there's nothing more than someone indulging in the absolute madness and mayhem and the subsequent tragedy, because that's Trevor's existence, and for most Grand Theft Auto players, or at least a decent core amount of them, that's their mindset too. And that's alright. The character dynamic between the 3 are all similar enough to see how they could commit such heinous crimes, such as running someone over with their car or killing and robbing someone. It's not out of any of their usual actions or typical behavior, yet they differ enough from one to the other to allow players at the very least to fantasize how they would perceive certain actions conducted by the player outside of scripted events or even cutscenes. Another aspect of this would be picking up hookers, for example. Trevor definitely wouldn't mind the companionship, while Franklin, on the other hand, would downright be repulsed by the thought of picking one up, especially if she's addicted to any kind of hard substance. We see his stance on this when he's dealing with Tanya and when he speaks of JB. Well, I'm going to be returning to the topic of the 3 characters later on and how much each one individual brings to the table, something that's only amplified when you add the other one and even 2 into the mix, but I want to briefly return to the idea of Grand Theft Auto 5 getting so much hate that it does. And really, I think there's another portion to it that so many people forget. It's constantly within the public's eye. Grand Theft Auto 5 hasn't gotten a chance for people to properly miss it. To reminisce on the golden days back when it was at its supposed apex, it's always in the top selling games of the month, a place it's been in consistently since the day it launched over 10 years ago. Rockstar is always pushing more content for Grand Theft Auto Online. We've seen 3 remasters for it in the span of 10 years, when usually we'll only see a remaster of one game after 5 to 10 years after its original launch. Rockstar has expedited that on a level never before seen. Grand Theft Auto 5 itself is a masterpiece. That's a sentiment I will always have for this game. It's a beautiful world with well-written characters, accurate parodies of real-life mentalities and companies in some instances. Just unfortunately, it's fallen victim to its own success. Grand Theft Auto 5, both single-player and multiplayer, would never be able to survive for as long as it has if it wasn't for the solid foundation that Rockstar has built with this game. Hundreds of millions of dollars invested in Sandbox like no other. However, you need only to look at Rockstar's game that they released 5 years after Grand Theft Auto 5, a game that undoubtedly dwarfs Grand Theft Auto in attention to detail, both in characters and the world. The story is also light years ahead, with a narrative that honestly has to be one of the most tear-jerking stories of all time. That game, of course, is Red Dead Redemption 2. The game I would call Rockstar's true magnum opus, the game that went so far to implement how weapons function based off how much you use them, and the environments you expose them to, with them gradually breaking down over time if you don't keep up your proper maintenance on said weapons, or people reacting to you if you're covered in blood, if you have scratches, if you're dirty, if you haven't showered, or if you smell, or even if you rob someone and you're wearing the same clothing or haven't worn any type of mask or bandana to hide your identity. A game where the world is alive in a way like no other. A game that even had more opportunities from the multiplayer perspective than Grand Theft Auto could have ever hoped to have, yet because GTA Online and Grand Theft Auto 5 was already established with hundreds of millions of players already having full access to that game, why reinvest in an entirely new online economy? Grand Theft Auto 5 is not a bad game. It never will be a bad game. While Rockstar has made pretty horrible pitfalls over the last year or so, ultimately they have not actually shattered their reputation for putting anything bad out. All they've really done is not being able to properly honor their own legacy of games, the legacy of games that got them to the point that they're at right now. I think what will reflect very poorly on Rockstar ultimately is if Grand Theft Auto 6 ended up becoming exactly the same piece of shit that we got with the GTA trilogy, or even the lazy port of Red Dead Redemption on the PlayStation system lately. Ultimately, what we have right now is not a bad game, and I'm sure in time more and more people will come back around and really love and cherish Grand Theft Auto 5 the way that it probably should be, but it's because the game hasn't even been given a chance to actually age. And it's not until Rockstar moves on to the next big, huge current project that it will slowly move out of the public's eye. And then that's when we can see the game finally being properly laid to rest. And along with it, all the hate and frustration and anger that people have about not having the next Grand Theft Auto or next massive Rockstar title.